The rain hammered against the windshield like thousands of tiny fists, each drop blurring the world outside until nothing existed but water and darkness. Sarah's hands trembled on the steering wheel as the engine sputtered one final time before dying completely. The dashboard lights flickered and went dark. In the back seat, her daughter Emma pressed her face against the window, her small voice cutting through the storm. "Mommy, why did we stop?" Sarah's throat tightened as she looked at the empty road stretching ahead. No headlights in either direction, no gas station signs glowing in the distance. Just them, stranded on a forgotten highway, with $63 in her wallet and a broken-down car that held everything they owned. 3 weeks ago, Sarah had packed their entire life into 7 boxes and this 15-year-old sedan. 3 weeks ago, she'd driven away from a marriage that had slowly suffocated her spirit, from a house that had become a prison, from a man whose love had twisted into something unrecognizable. She'd driven toward her sister's place in Oregon, toward a fresh start, toward hope. But now, on this dark stretch of highway somewhere in Northern California, that hope felt as fragile as morning frost. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah said, forcing brightness into her voice. "We just need to rest for a minute. The car's just tired like us." Emma, only 5 years old, but already wise beyond her years, simply nodded. She'd learned not to ask too many questions. She'd learned to be brave when Mommy's voice shook. Sarah grabbed her phone. No signal, of course. She'd been watching the bars disappear for the last 30 miles, watching civilization fade away in her rearview mirror. She tried the engine again. Nothing. Not even a cough. The rain continued its assault, and the temperature inside the car was already dropping. "Mommy, I'm cold," Emma whispered. Sarah climbed into the back seat and wrapped her daughter in her arms, pulling the only blanket they had over both of them. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." Time moved strangely in that car. It could have been 20 minutes or 2 hours when headlights finally appeared in the distance. Sarah's heart leaped, then immediately filled with dread. What if it was him? What if her ex-husband had somehow tracked them down? But no, she told herself. He didn't care enough to follow. That was almost worse. The vehicle slowed as it approached, a sleek black SUV that looked wildly out of place on this forgotten road. It pulled over in front of them, and Sarah's maternal instincts kicked in. She held Emma tighter. Stranger danger, she thought. All those warnings she'd taught her daughter now applied to their own situation. A man got out, holding a jacket over his head against the rain. He was tall, wearing what looked like an expensive suit beneath his coat, completely incongruous with the setting. He approached her window carefully, hands visible, keeping his distance. Even through the rain-streaked glass, Sarah could see the concern in his eyes. She cracked the window an inch. "Are you okay?" he shouted over the storm. "Do you need help?" Every news story about women and children in danger flashed through Sarah's mind. But there was something in his face, in the way he stood back, giving her space that made her answer. "Car died," she said. "Phone doesn't work out here." "I have signal," he said. "I can call for help." Or, he hesitated, "I know a bit about engines. Could I take a look?" Sarah studied him for a long moment. Emma peered around her shoulder. "He looks nice, Mommy." The man smiled, a gentle expression that reached his eyes. "I promise I just want to help. I have a daughter about her age. I'd hope someone would stop if they were stuck out here." Something in Sarah broke, or maybe opened. She'd been so guarded for so long, trusting no one, expecting the worst. But sometimes you had to choose to believe in kindness, or you'd lose yourself entirely. "Okay," she said. "Thank you." He jogged to his SUV and returned with a toolbox and a flashlight. For the next 40 minutes, he worked in the pouring rain while Sarah and Emma watched from inside the car. He didn't complain, didn't ask invasive questions. He just worked, methodically checking components, his expensive suit getting soaked and mud-stained. "Try it now," he finally called out. Sarah turned the key. The engine turned over once, twice, then roared to life. Relief flooded through her so intensely that tears sprang to her eyes. The man closed the hood and came back to her window, drenched but smiling. "Loose battery cable and a clogged fuel filter. She should get you where you're going now. But you'll want a mechanic to give her a proper look." "How much do I owe you?" Sarah asked, already knowing the $63 wouldn't be enough. He looked startled. Nothing. I was driving by. I stopped. That's all. But pay it forward, he said simply. Someday, when you can, help someone else who's stuck. Before she could protest further, Emma rolled down her window. What's your name? She asked. Marcus, he said, crouching down to her level despite the rain. What's yours? Emma. Thank you for fixing our car, Marcus. You're very welcome, Emma. He stood, gave them both a final nod, and jogged back to his SUV. As he drove away, his taillights disappearing into the storm, Sarah sat stunned. A stranger had stopped in the pouring rain, fixed their car, and asked for nothing in return. She'd forgotten the world contained people like that. He was like a superhero, Emma said softly. Yeah, baby, Sarah whispered. He really was. They made it to Sarah's sister's house 2 days later. The reunion was tearful, joyful, full of promises of new beginnings. Sarah found work at a local cafe, enrolled Emma in kindergarten, and slowly started rebuilding their lives, one careful day at a time. 6 months passed. The gray winter gave way to spring, and with it came a stability Sarah hadn't known in years. She'd made friends, Emma was thriving, and the fear that had lived in her chest for so long was finally starting to fade. One Saturday, Sarah's sister convinced her to attend a community fundraiser at the local children's hospital. Emma skipped ahead of them through the parking lot, her new butterfly backpack bouncing with each step. Inside, the hospital atrium was transformed with balloons and banners. A small stage had been set up where various speakers were thanking donors and sharing stories. Sarah was only half listening, distracted by making sure Emma didn't wander off, when a familiar voice came through the speakers. Believe that when we have the means, we have the responsibility to help others. Sarah's head snapped up. On stage, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and speaking to the crowd of hundreds, was Marcus. The same kind eyes, the same gentle smile. But the banner behind him read, Marcus Chen, CEO, Chen Technologies. The CEO. The man who'd fixed their car in the pouring rain, who'd gotten covered in mud and oil, who'd asked for nothing in return. He was a billionaire tech CEO. Emma suddenly gasped and pulled on Sarah's sleeve. Her small voice carried in a moment of silence as the speech ended. That's the man who fixed our car, Mommy! Emma's finger pointed directly at the stage. That's Marcus. Heads turned. Marcus's eyes found them in the crowd, and recognition flashed across his face. His professional composure cracked into genuine surprise, then joy. What happened next felt like a dream. Marcus came down from the stage, waving off his assistants, and walked straight to them. He crouched down just as he had that night, at Emma's level. Emma, and I'm sorry I never got your name that night. Sarah, she managed, her voice barely working. I had no idea who you were. That was rather the point, he said, standing. I was driving back from a tech conference. Couldn't stop thinking about board meetings and profit margins. Then I saw your car, and suddenly none of that mattered. You needed help. It was the simplest thing in the world. But you're... Sarah gestured helplessly at everything around them. The hospital wing that bore his family's name. The hundreds of people who'd paid thousands of dollars just to attend this event. I'm someone who had a dead battery once and a stranger who stopped to help, Marcus said quietly. I'm someone whose daughter was in this hospital for 3 months, and I learned that kindness matters more than any technology I'll ever create. He looked at Emma. You asked me that night about paying it forward. Have you helped anyone? Sarah thought of the single mother at the cafe who she'd covered, a shift for last week, the elderly neighbor whose groceries she carried upstairs, the small kindnesses she'd started spreading, ripples from that night in the rain. We're trying, Sarah said. That's all any of us can do, Marcus replied. He pulled a business card from his pocket, not his CEO card, but a personal one. My private number. If you ever need anything, a job reference, a mechanic recommendation, advice, anything. And Emma, he reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small toy butterfly. I saw your backpack. Butterflies mean transformation, new beginnings. Emma took it reverently, her eyes wide with wonder. As they drove home that evening, Emma clutching her butterfly and chattering about superheroes who fix cars, Sarah realized something profound. Marcus had given them so much more than a working engine that night. He'd restored her faith in humanity at a moment when she'd lost faith in everything. He'd shown Emma that kindness wasn't a weakness, that helping others was the most important work anyone could do, regardless of their job title or bank balance. The world was full of storms and broken-down cars and dark highways, but it was also full of people like Marcus, and Sarah hoped, more like who she was becoming, people who stopped in the rain, who helped without asking for anything in return, who understood that we're all just human beings trying to make our way home. 2 years later, Sarah would launch her own nonprofit, helping domestic violence survivors get back on their feet. She would call it the Battery Project, because sometimes people just needed a jump start, a little help to get their engine running again. And she would tell everyone who asked that it started with a stranger in the rain who showed her daughter what real heroism looked like. Someone who stopped when they could have driven by, who helped when they could have looked away, who proved that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything.